Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Let's dive right into it. So, in the grimdark universe of Warhammer 40K, there are a whole pantheon of deities littered throughout the warp and the material planes. But the four big ones are the gods of chaos. And probably the strongest god of chaos, and my personal favorite, is Khorne, the blood god, the lord of skulls and rage. Khorne is the god of war and hatred, but he is also the god of honor through combat, strength, and brutal honesty. To the point where Khorne and his followers will never lie, cheat, or steal. They believe in being strong in all physical and philosophical senses. And as far as demonic gods go, this probably makes him the least terrible of the space satans that there are in Warhammer. Now, Khorne resides in the immaterial realm of the warp, and he draws his powers from acts of murder and violence that are all committed in the material realm that we inhabit in reality, which is also called the Materium, or the material universe. So, there's an entire universe entirely encompassed in war in Warhammer 40K, which definitely makes Khorne a big chungus of a chaos god. I mean, he is overly satiated with demonic power drawn from never-ending bloodshed and battle. He's got an enormous throne made out of an infinite amount of skulls and brass iron and blackened steel. And he's got a nice little war cry also that all of his followers like chanting that references his throne as well. It's blood for the blood god and skulls for the skull throne of Khorne. Now, the chaos god of battle himself is truly massive, to say the least. He stands at hundreds of feet tall. He is vaguely humanoid in that he has 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, and he has a human-shaped body going on. He is always encased in tons of demonic battle armor, just layers and layers of armor. He's got this huge, savage, snarling face that is described as being like that of a twisted and snarling dog. Every time he speaks, it's a low growl or a bark of endless fury that is just roaring bloodlust just across his realm of chaotic combat. Now, Khorne also has a legendary 2-handed greatsword that's got its own pretty cool visage and names of doom and destruction, like Woebringer, the end of all things, and Warmaker. It's pretty sick and threatening names for a sword. I mean, those are exactly the kinds of names I would want my sword to have, right? You want fear-inspiring names for your weapons. You wouldn't go the opposite direction, right? I mean, I couldn't see a sword called Might Hurt a Little or Causes Irritability. I mean, that would just be downright silly. But that's not good old Space Satan's style. No, sir. He likes instilling as much blood-curdling fear in his enemies as possible. Now, something else that is kind of quirky about these Chaos Gods is that they all have these special sacred numbers. which is obviously a play on Christian mythos with the holy number 7 and the satanic number 666. And each Chaos God really plays into it. Khorne's magic number is 8, and his followers have an affinity for 8 and any multiple of 8. As a matter of fact, his armies will organize themselves into squads and legions based around this number. I mean, if it's squads, it's made up of 8 soldiers, or if it's legions, then 8,000 demon warriors per legion, where a legion is typically 2,000, but it's a demon legion. So what do you want, right? And just like in Christian mythos, if Khorne's followers want to invoke him, let's say, his power or that of his followers, they can use rituals utilizing the number 8 in a symbology of whatever it is they're trying to achieve. There's also a mark of Khorne that resembles an 8. There's lots of stuff going on with the 8 number here in regards to Khorne's power and how he links it exactly to his followers. Why he chose 8, I don't know. I don't think it is mentioned why the demon space gods choose their numbers exactly. That's just what they landed on. And we go from there. Now, what exactly gets our favorite space demon lord up in the morning? What drives his existence day to day? I mean, we know he's made manifest by conflict, right? Conflict and fight and battle and war. They're as old as existence itself, right? There's always been conflict. There's always been fighting. So there's always been Khorne. Khorne's always been around. That's what makes him materialize in the warp, right? Now we know he's beefed up by all of this bloodshed and murder and battle. But is there anything else to the Sultan of Slaughter? Anything more than just wanton death and destruction? Well, Khorne is not really concerned as to the whys or the hows of war and violence. He just cares that they happen. And he doesn't just want minor or petty, small-scale stuff. Oh, no. Khorne wants war on the most massive scale possible. And he is by no means a single race-centric god by any means. He has followers and will bestow blessings on any being of any race that follows the way of the sword and carnage. I mean, he's got orcs and Rakgol hunters working and worshipping for him. As a matter of fact, there was an orc warlord named Tuska. This is a pretty famous story. Tuska led a orc war campaign through the gates of Cadia. Now, Cadia was a human fortress world that guarded a kind of a gateway to the warp, and it got blown up. It got destroyed. Yeah, pretty sad. Really quick and easy way to make any human guardsman cry, just mentioning the fall of Cadia and tears. So Tuska leads his warband through into the warp, and he conquers a bunch of worlds that are controlled by some of the other demon lords, some of the other chaos gods. And Khorne takes notice of this, and whenever Tuska lands his forces on a world owned by him, Khorne sends his legions just straight after him. And he has one of his favored warriors, the demon prince known as the Blood Prince, to lead them. Now, the warband of orcs, they battle it out with the legions of demons, with neither side relenting, and Tuska even manages to stab the Blood Prince just right up his demon nards before the Blood Prince kills him. Well, this bloody war and the just ferocity and the tenacity that Tuska and his orc warband show fighting his forces just impress the hell out of Khorne so much that he resurrects the orcs in Tuska and has them fight his elite demons and their generals on a daily basis in front of his brass citadel. And every time they die, Khorne just hits the multi-res button, just revives them over and over to have the orcs and Tuska fight his elites on a daily basis to entertain him. And the orcs love this. The orcs truly think that they have found a sort of heaven, because orcs love to fight. They live for war, and they were kind of made for it by some old gods, but that's another story. So the orcs have this endless lust for combat, so they are perfect for Khorne and his realm. Now, like I stated previously, there's a few other chaos gods that are out there, right? And Khorne does not care for any of them, really. Least of all, the god of pain and pleasure, Slaanesh. Now, Khorne hates Slaanesh probably the most out of all of them. He sees Slaanesh as an affront to all of Khorne's senses of duty and honor and self-sacrifice and seeking strength through trials and combat. And this is pretty understandable, because Slaanesh's whole bag is self-indulgence and constantly seeking pleasures of every kind. Khorne's not on board with any of that. He sees Slaanesh as this soft, weak little pansy ass, and he envisions just choking the life out of Slaanesh until his godly bones break. Khorne doesn't really mess with Nurgle much. I don't think Khorne's forces have ever mucked with the followers of Nurgle or Mortarion. It'd be interesting to see if they did, because it would be two forces that don't kind of stop. Like, you can't. It's super hard to kill the followers of Nurgle because they don't feel pain, and it's equally as hard to hurt the followers of Khorne because they feel pain, but they allow that pain to fuel their hatred and their bloodshed, and it just makes them fight 10 times harder, right? So that would be an unstoppable force and an immovable object just going at it. And it'd be pretty fun to see, honestly. Khorne doesn't care much for the last god on our list, Tzeentch. Tzeentch is he's the god of like manipulation and sorcery, and he's all about scheming and manipulation. And Khorne has no patience for this whatsoever. His forces will team up with Tzeentch's on occasion if there's a greater threat, or if there's a goal that they both want to achieve. But this will not last, because either Tzeentch's forces will be caught in their manipulations of Khorne's forces, or Khorne's followers will be like, okay, well, our shared enemy is kind of weakened now. Time to turn our cannons on Tzeentch's bird boys and just smack the dog shit out of some psychers. So they're inevitably going to betray one another. It's just a matter of time. But yeah, out of all the gods, I think Khorne can stomach Tzeentch the most, maybe. It's also worthy of note just who Khorne's most notable servant is. And he's one of my favorite characters in general. We have Angron, the Red Angel. Angron was once a son of the Emperor of Mankind. He was, not only that, he was a Primarch who fell during the Horus Heresy and is now a demon Primarch. And Angron has one of my favorite stories of all time in Warhammer 40K. And I'll surmise it just to kind of highlight how powerful Khorne can be. So there was this there's this kind of a beacon out in space on this moon, and the Imperium of Man, the Empire, used it to kind of help in their ship building and their navigation, and their psychers navigating their ships through the warp, which is how they move through hyperspace, quote unquote. Well, that beacon was screaming endlessly inside of Angron's mind. So Angron takes his legion, the World Eaters, and rages through space to destroy the beacon, which is guarded by a huge army. An army bigger than an army. I mean, you've got Grey Knights, you've got thousands of capital ships, hundreds of psychers, thousands and thousands of space marines. There are billions and billions of super soldiers right in Angron's way. And this is how little Angron cares. Angron is standing on the front of a giant spaceship in space, right? Well, does Angron wait around for that ship to reach the range of his enemies? Oh no. No, not in the least. Angron leaps off of it into the vacuum of space, screaming war cries, and hurtles himself towards his enemies faster than his ship can move. And he slaughters everyone. Literally, eventually Angron makes it to the beacon itself, where the forces of the Empire kind of turn the power of the beacon onto Angron, and it does bring him to fall to a knee. And when he is at his most beaten is when Angron feels the presence of his dark god behind him. Khorne gets up from his skull throne, places a hand on the shoulder of his beloved servant, raises his greatsword along with Angron, and channels all of his might through his mighty champion to cleave the beacon and the moon it rests on in half. But it doesn't end there. Not only does Khorne's power wielded through Angron break a moon in half, but the shockwave radiating from that power also kills billions of others surrounding, and trillions more in the surrounding system were infected with a blood curse that caused them to rip each other apart, leaving only the Sisters of Silence, the Custodes, and the Grey Knights, who are all top-tier psychics, unaffected. So yeah, that is how powerful Khorne can be through one of his champions. Just channeling a bit of his power through somebody who is super teeny tiny in comparison to him. That is as if I channeled all of my incredible strength through a chihuahua, and the chihuahua punches a cinder block into pieces. It's stupid wild, right? Imagine what Khorne could do if he was just casually strolling through the universe himself. All of existence would crumble in an instant as soon as he shows up. And yeah, that's Khorne. I mean, he's pretty stinking cool as far as sci-fi space villains go. I mean, he's got a whole realm in what's essentially space hell, where his worlds are covered in oceans of blood and volcanic mountains of black smoke and iron. There's a lake, actually, called the Lake of Slaughter, where thousands of rivers of blood empty into it, and giant leviathans made out of bones and brass metals swim around, devouring anything or anybody caught in the waters. I mean, he's also got probably one of the coolest and most badass setups out of all the gods in the Warhammer 40K universe, to be honest. And his realm is, I'd say, the most like what we would think of actual hell to be in the first place. Just a lot less full of torture and more put up or shut up kind of a hell. Like you'd be fighting random demons on the daily, like just for eternity. But I mean, at least Khorne gives you a fighting chance, which is very unlike all of the other gods, especially all of the other chaos gods. But that is for another episode. That is all the time I had for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and stick around for more Sci-Fi Unchained. But for now, live long and prosper, my friends, and may the Force be with us all.